right through me. La 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 la. You bashful boy, you're hiding something sweet. Please give it to me. Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome from unceded, occupied, a lonely land where we're standing shoulder to shoulder with those struggling to free the land. Before we jump right in, I want to introduce you to our team. We have the incredible Maven, juggler, assistant, producer, stage manager, Zoom manager, the great Sarah Gasser.
Yay.
And to my left-hand lady is the producer, editor, director, just general boss lady, the great Zigstress of Lauenburg, Ziggy Lauenburg.
I wanted to just let you know, if you haven't figured that out already, but even if you have, he deserves extra mention for the vision behind doing this, especially during this time, to choose a way for us to be creative and also document his life and his development as an artist. And a lot of people that I know are personally always asking me questions about Raymond and his writing and how does he write and who is he inspired by. So we're crafting it as best we can with the technology available, and we hope you enjoy tonight. He's the founder of Upsurge and Upsurge NYC, and he's the vision behind this, and we co-lead the band together when we can perform live.
Poetry, the best words in the best order.
Blocking like the boxing and basketball. Coming across your axe, your sacks with your left leg at a 45. Shooting that slingshot in self-defense, urgent. Splitting tones, left, center. Soothing contusions and abrasions of blues people. Blues people whose everydays are earthquakes and flash floods. Urgent. Lips locking down round that mouthpiece like San Quentin after a riot. Body and horn foreboding fire this time. Urgent. Circular breathing, the unbending sound round the stratosphere beyond the human ear. Pitches wolves here are ooh, shattering glass like shack dunks. Urgent. Voicing pains of blues people. Blues people muted like monk notes on seaweed. 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 Urgent. Want men made by the billion. Run men made to hurry. David Murray and the herd, so it's really true. So no time to play till this planet. David Murray, hey, urgent. Want men made by the billion. Run men made to hurry. David Murray, so it's really true. So no time to play till this planet. David Murray, hey, urgent.
Mr. Turner, you want to talk about your early development?
Yeah, well, it was very interesting. I just want to jet back to 100 years ago. In February of this year, the city of Berkeley proclaimed a day in my honor. That was February 25th. And I think the biggest joy for me was to have two of my teachers attend with me, be there with me, and also to see a fourth grade teacher there that I had worked with in one of the Berkeley schools. But even before that, when I think back about teachers, my very first teacher was my mom. We can't get away from that again. She sung lullabies to me and read nursery rhymes. And, those were kind of seeds that were planted in my ears. And then following that, I think the most influential teacher of mine was a middle school teacher by the name of Cheston Everett. And he had this great stentorian voice, and he introduced us to poems like On His Blindness, and Elizabeth Barrett Browning's poem, How Do I Love Thee, all these kind of things, Frankie and Johnny and the Pied Piper of Hamelin. So on Fridays, he would read to us. And I think what that did is it really kind of implanted this notion of stage and performance. And, I didn't recognize it at the time, but that's what was going on. And he was also very demanding. And, but
In what kind of way?
We would have to stand up and say, he would say, who wrote How Do I Love Thee? And he used to stand up, Sir, Elizabeth Barrett Browning wrote, that kind of stuff. And, it's just that whole formality and so forth. And I didn't so much care for that, but I really did love the literature. And overall, I say this again and again, I didn't get a very good education. I wasn't a very good student either. That is not to say that there weren't good teachers that I encountered throughout my journey through the Los Angeles public educational system or miseducational system. But what went on is that it wasn't systematic.
Mm-hmm.
The education, there was no plan. It was very haphazard. One year there's grammar, next year's literature, no continuity. So I think that hurt. So when I went to Cal State Los Angeles, there was a teacher there. By that time I was writing, and if anyone who's seen the first episode knows,
LA City College.
that I was at Los Angeles City College, and I was dubbed the people's poet because I was a writer, activist, a cultural worker in service of the people, in the struggles at that time. I was spoke at rallies, or I did my poetry at rallies, other kinds of events. And back during that time, I also had the great privilege of opening for James Baldwin. And so I had, I really even had a following, believe it or not, which was kind of way out for me in a way when I think back on it. But what was striking is I had some real insecurities around knowing that I didn't know enough. I was self-taught, and there was so much more for me to learn. And the thing that I had the most insecurity about was imagery. I was like, oh my God, what is this thing called imagery? And so when I was at Cal State, I had this professor by the name of Ken Hepburn, a Euro-American, kind of hip guy with a tweed jacket and a pipe and long hair. And so we had our our conference, and he looked at my work and he said, oh yeah, you're a word man, And so he validated my strengths as opposed to saying, well, you need to go and work on imagery. He saw what I was doing at that particular time. And so that really gave me a sense of would you say, just validation that what you're doing.
In what you are doing or what your strength was.
Yeah,
Can you explain what he meant, what you took him to mean by saying you're a word man?
Well,
maybe for the more general audience.
He's looking at the wordplay that I like, which is punning, which is double entendres and so forth, that kind of thing. I'm fascinated by turning language inside out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ken Hepburn was really instrumental at that time in terms of just getting me grounded and situated and feeling that what I was doing was valid. Believe it or not, even though I had this following and I had done all these things, I was never secure, quote unquote. I was always had insecurities. So.
Like every other artist I know.
Right.
Yeah, it's great to let us know what the inside sometimes feels like for performing and producing and writing.
Right.
You sought out resources to supplement your learning, and you wanted
Right. Yeah. One
talk
of the
about
things
one
that
of
I
them.
did is I hung out in the libraries ever since I was a kid. And so I found this series on poetry. It was actually recording, believe it or not, 33 recording, 33 RPMs, vinyl. And it was called Understanding Poetry. And I listened to it and then recorded it on cassette tape and listened to it over and over and over. And it really broke poetry down in a really bite-sized way that I could take in and just work on each aspect of it, as it related to what I was trying to do.
Your independent study. Maybe we can hear a little bit piece of that.
Another strong appeal to the ear can be made through using onomatopoeia in poetry. Here, the poet conveys his effect through choosing words which imitate the sound of the thing or action described. Examples of onomatopoeic words which we employ daily are hiss, gurgle, whiz, bang, thud, murmur, rustle, and screech. Something drops with a thud. The word thud approximates the sound made when the object strikes the floor. A subdued current of conversation is conveyed by the word murmur. Another example of onomatopoeia. An automobile suddenly braked will often screech to a halt. Again, the idea is expressed in the sound of the word. Unusual examples of onomatopoeia in poetry occur in Poe's poem The Raven, in the lines, "The silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before." We can actually hear the ominous movement of the curtains through the use of the word rustle and the S sounds which precede it, in the words silken, sad, and uncertain. Note also the alliteration in this line and the following one, in the words filled, fantastic, and felt.
I hope that the white man can see this, because if you don't see it, you're finished. If you don't see it, you're going to become involved in some action in which you don't have a chance.
The quizzical look, the small gesture you taught me, made all the difference in the world. Made John Brown's truth better, like the ballot or the bullet.
That was a poem that I did in tribute to the late Michael Lange, and that was a service that took place in Oakland. Wow.
Okay.
So,
Another teacher you've had, vocal teacher, for music teacher. The esteemed Bay Area Professor Bill Bell. This is a letter that you wrote to him in December of '96. Dear Mr. Bell, this is a brief note to express my gratitude for the wonderful learning experience you afforded me. I enjoyed your classes. They were informative and uplifting. Learning about word painting, recitative, and imitation were, for me, worth the price of admission. Learning about warming up the voice, learning the exercises, and how to try and blend with other voices were all very important. And of course, you opened my ears and mind to music I'd not been exposed to. I'd like to take your classes again in January, and maybe the semester after too, but I'd like to do it on a semi-audit basis. Is that possible? I'm on my own journey. I'm trying to accomplish certain things, and my stops here are part of the overall trip. My signposts have never been marked by the letters A, B, C, D, F. They instead have been marked applicable or NA, not applicable. Your classes are certainly in the former category. I'm involved in a recording project, and I'm learning about the business end of it through reading, consultation, and hands-on experience. As you know from your CD project, the time requirements are awesome. Anyway, Mr. Bell, thanks again. You're a great teacher and role model. Respectfully, Raymond.
Dr. William Bill Bell, Jr., a renowned jazz pianist, arranger, composer, and educator from East Moline, Illinois, widely known as the Jazz Professor. Mr. Bell mentored many professional musicians as a college professor and jazz band director, recorded several jazz albums, and worked with the likes of Benny Carter, Roy Eldridge, Buddy Montgomery, Clark Terry, the legendary Lou Rawls, Louis Bellson, the Supremes, and Carmen McRae. Mr. Bell went on to make other recordings and composed a work for the San Francisco Symphony. He also began a long career as an esteemed educator that included being chairman of the College of Alameda Music Department, jazz improvisation teacher at the University of California, Berkeley, and director of Stanford University Jazz Band. Prominent students include Sheila Escobedo, better known as Prince collaborator Sheila E., pianists Benny Green, Michael Wolff, Glenn Pearson, Jimmy McKinney, and Herschel Kennedy of Graham Central Station. Drummer Will Kennedy of the Yellow Jackets. Grammy Awards music conductors, arrangers Larry Batiste and Claytoven Richardson. Trombonist Wayne Wallace and Angela Wellman. Saxophone players Dave Ellis and Charles McNeil, and trumpeters John Faddis and George Spencer. Mr. Bell also was a composer. His commissioned works include East Meets West for the Oakland Youth Symphony and Right On for the San Francisco Symphony. He released his
Yeah. Mr. Bill Bell, I had a wonderful journey in his class. You know, it exposed me to opera. Actually, I was in a vocal class that focused on bel canto, and we sang opera. And then also I was in another class, a chorus rather. And it was just really incredible. And as well, I had his music appreciation class. And so it just opened my ears up to some really incredible things that were new to me. And I also began to see how there's a saying that there's nothing new under the sun, how all these things sort of connect at some junctures. I learned about recitative, you know, that was really pretty incredible because what we were doing with Upsurge is, you know, had been called spoken word and jazz poetry, whatever. And
I knew I got that wrong.
Yeah, it's okay.
Recitative.
So in any case, Mr. Bell was a very exacting teacher. And also he was close friends with Donald Duck Bailey, who was one of my mentors. And they both had worked with Carmen McRae, the great jazz singer, Carmen McRae. And what I didn't know is that he was reporting to Duck about how I was doing in class. And I was doing pretty good. I was pretty excited and engaged by what he was doing. And of course, music teachers can tell when you've practiced or not practiced, you know, it's very apparent. So mostly I was on par, and you know, he was really happy with my development. The only thing is, you know, with all my arts education, it seems as though it's been off and on. Sometimes it's been governed by money, and other times it's by other things that intervened. So, but in any case, he was just a wonderful instructor who opened my ears up to a lot of new things. And also he demystified music and music theory, you know, and there's a line in The Godfather where the Don is telling Michael, we just didn't have enough time. And that's the way I feel in the case of Mr. Bell and Michael Anns too.
So there's a special teacher who became a lifelong friend and collaborator in certain ways. And I wanted to know if you're ready for the segue to your next teacher.
Oh yeah, that's Mary Webb, a writing teacher, and I guess I will talk about her after show and tell or tell and show.
I think we're going to have some video.
Okay.
My name is Mary Webb. I'm originally from New York City, and I'm teaching at Berkeley City College and also private classes. And I teach playwriting and screenwriting and fiction writing at Berkeley City College. The kinds of students that take my classes are all kinds of students. It's a terrifically, playwriting and screenwriting is very diverse, and fiction writing is very diverse too. And that's very important because each person is bringing his or her own experience to the class. Whether they're writing something that's totally fictional or they're writing something that in some way is based on their life, each person has his or her own life, lifestyle, background, culture, and each person is bringing that into the class. So it's a class in diversity without ever being called that, which is very, very exciting for me. And we do a lot of colorblind casting and playwriting and screenwriting. So somebody who's African American might be playing Annie's Nin, if that was a character in the play or the screenplay, who was French and Spanish, and people are cutting across all the traditional ideas of who should be doing what. Somebody who's 60 may be playing somebody who's 25 and doing a good job of it. A lot of people, including Bill Clinton and all kinds of people on television or radio, would say people should talk about race and they don't do it. And I thought, well, I have an apartment, I know some people, why don't I try to do it? And I thought, what could be the worst thing that could happen? It would be terrible, and I'd have one, and that would be the end. And the next one we're having is number 29.
It's a gradual growing of a sense of community and love and learning about loving people and not just the idea and the abstract idea of tolerance and coming together.
It's great to have a place to come, you know, where you can commune with people, where you can break bread and share thoughts and feel like you have a community that provides you with psychic support and spiritual support and sometimes even political support.
Mary Webb, yes, probably, you know, next to my mom and the influence of Angela Davis's politics, Mary Webb was probably the most influential teacher I've had. I met her in a law library. I was doing some research. I was working in a company, Montgomery Ward, that was owned by Mobil Oil, and so I was trying to find some research on information on what they were planning to do and how they were planning to screw the workers, basically. And so we met at a copy machine, and then long story short, I ended up taking her class that was taught at South Berkeley Senior Center through Vista College, I believe it was. And in that one, I think it was the first meeting she would typically ask, what are the hindrances, what are the obstacles, the roadblocks to writing? And people would call out things like time management or perfectionism, et cetera, et cetera. And so she would have a whole list of things on the board at the end of people's input. And then she would try and go through those things. But what I took, my major takeaway from her was claiming your time to write, from family, friends, the organizations you're in, whatever the case may be, just claiming that time. And she really emphasized that. And that was something that really provided me with a foundation and got me going.
Can you explain just a bit about that time period, what was mainly going on for you during that period, and then how that turned around?
Well, I was organizing. I was working in an organization, and I was, committed to that. And, people would want you to put in the work. And then
political organizing, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
at a certain point, I said, well, I'm writing, this time, and people were like, what? And then a publication came out, and I had work in it, and everybody was kind of like, oh my God, everybody was kind of proud of me.
Then they got it.
Then they got it. And from that point on, I had no problems with claiming that writing space. But there was, I remember, I think it was the first class or maybe second class or whatever. It was early in my tenure with her. There were these two really great poets in the class. These were women, who knows what their names are, but they were European women. They were Western European or Eastern European women. And they wrote beautiful poetry. They had these great images. Here we go with imagery again. Their writing was so beautiful. Like, in fact, I remember one woman's poem talking about the hollow belly of the violin, singing or whatever. And, but when it came to, everyone was going gaga over their work, which was really good. That was justified. But when it came time for them to critique other people's or to have input on other people's work, they were, very nitpicky and condescending and, kind of putting other writers down, it seemed. And then Mary, I remember she said, stop, I will not have that in my class. She talked about coming out of a writer's program at UC Berkeley, where this professor had come in at the beginning of classes and said that, everyone else, there'll be one writer among you and the rest of you should go find something else to do, or whatever, some off-putting remarks like that. And so she said how she related how it had ruined people's lives and how it had damaged people, and very seriously. And she said she wouldn't have it in her class. And I was just blown away to see an instructor take that kind of stand.
Right.
And
she even has a methodology.
And I said to myself at that point that, this woman and I are going to be friends for a minute. And then at that point, some point soon afterwards, she invited me to participate in her private workshops, which are held at her home. And she has a method called the 3-stage method, in which I found very useful, because what it did, the first stage, she didn't allow, she only wanted absolutely positive feedback or comments on someone's work, whoever the writer was. Like in her private workshops, each writer would have a night. And so the first stage after they finished their reading would be for people to make comments on their work. And this would be positive feedback and
language,
particularly the language,
right.
And I thought that was just really great. And her theory behind it was that it protected the writer's being and their just, it protected them as a writer and as a human being. It didn't allow someone to crush someone. Now, of course, I didn't really need that, because I was coming out of the movement. And so I was clear about my purpose. And so I didn't care, in some way what people might say or might not say. But the beauty of it that I got, and the benefit for me, was that when people put their heads to something, they can see things that you didn't even see that are there. They can help you elevate your work to an even higher level through their comments, and many of the people had been taking private workshops with Mary for quite a while.
Yeah.
And so they knew, they were very astute at picking out language and seeing where you were trying to go. And then later the second stage, the writer
Ask questions.
himself or herself can ask the group questions about your work. How did this work, or did you understand that, or was this vague, or whatever the question was. And depending on how well the writer had prepared with their questions, that was what the commentary could provide them.
And then the third stage, they can get to a little things that maybe you want to try if this might work a little better in this situation.
Right.
But by then, it's true. I took, as you can probably gather, I took plenty after I met her. I've met Mary, who's a dearest friend of mine now, and I took class after Raymond started taking workshop with her, and then I followed. We've been on and off taking workshop and classes. So. Oh, yeah.
It was, Mary was very, as I say, very important in my development, giving me the right to write as I think of it, carving out your own time. And another thing I think is equally important for me is that she modeled DIY, do it yourself. I remember she wanted to bring a Detroit poet by the name of Naomi Long Madgett to the Bay Area. And so each student kicked in $10. And at that time, it was sufficient to bring someone from Detroit and back. And then Mary's home was always an auditorium, a theater, a club, a banquet hall, classroom, whatever. And so we brought the poet there, and that taught me that if you wanted to do something, and you could do it yourself. You can get the resources, you can get people to buy in, and you can make that happen. You don't have to be dependent on the various gatekeepers, the arts agencies, or the clubs and other venues.
Which brings me to just a mention about what you saw, one piece of that video about the dialogues on race, racism, and ethnicity in the US. It was an idea that Mary came up with, that she, like a lot of her ideas, let's just do this in my living room. And she had living room theater, and she decided to try it. And I said to her one time, several dialogues in, how did you decide you were going to keep doing this? And she said, well, as long as 20 to 25 people show up every time, I'm going to keep doing it. And we've had, and it goes on beyond us leaving the Bay Area, they were up to number 75, I think, dialogues over the years. We did the first 11 years.
We were moderators and co-moderators.
Sorry.
Ziggy was both.
We both moderated. We
co-moderators,
and it was at Mary's house, and we would do it four times a year, and it's an amazing thing. And Mary decided to do this and kept doing it. And except for COVID, it would still be going on, but we're hoping we could get resumed at some point in some fashion or other. So. That's what we want to say.
Yeah. So
one thing you said to me, one more thing I wanted to emphasize is that Mary has a lot of roots in the civil rights movement and the movement, and being in Florida and the South, and just her whole life is expressed that way. Right. And one thing that immediately made you comfortable, you said, when you came into her sphere.
Yeah, that was one thing that was very important. I noticed that there were people of all ethnicities, nationalities, religious groups, sexual orientations, occupations,
and
really
ages too.
Occupations, because I remember one African-American woman who was a plumber and a very good friend of Mary's, and became later a good friend of mine as well. So it was just really a wonderful place to read your work and listen to other people's work and grow and develop, because I had been in situations being the only African-American. I grew very, very tired of that. You always had to explain to people, educate people. And then also, I'd been in all Black groups where you had, Black, 37th Power, Black people, all that kind of stuff. But I didn't like either of those two fields. Mary's set was internationalist without a lot of labels there. It just was how she rolled. And it, Iranian people, Armenian, Mexican, Native Americans.
Now you're gonna get in trouble.
Of course, Jews and African Americans were very present. But it was just an incredible place where people were real about their cultures, and they were very proud of their cultures. And it wasn't some watered down smush mishmash thing where the melting pot. Now it was more like a salad bowl. And so that really contributed to my work and my outlook.
Teacher that you did some vocal training with, singing.
Yeah, there, I was an artist in residence with the California Arts Council for 6 years. And as an artist in residence with CAC, California Arts Council, there were a lot of other peers who were teaching classes, and you could drop into those classes and take those classes and have relationships with those artists and collaborate with those other artists. And one of those artists was the great Joey Blake of Voicestra fame, who's a associate professor at the Berklee School of Music in Massachusetts. So if we can give a little
taste.
Look at, a little taste of Mr. Blake.
That will happen when you come to one of these Bobby McFine shows. Anything can happen.
Anything.
Joey, you and me, come on, man. Come on, let's do something. Come on, you and me, man. You go ahead and start something. You always start.
I'm always starting something.
Go start something.
Well, I'm gonna start something then.
I know Joey Blake now for about 27 years or something like that. We sing together long time. We got a singing history. Yes, we do. Long time. Yes, we do. Joey B. Joey B and me for a long time. Long time. Yes, we do. Long time.
Bobby is the man who take me out of myself, make me step out of the safe place and jump off the cliff. Make me wanna.
I also had the privilege of studying with Joey and Bobby at Omega in Rhinebeck, New York. And
2004.
And it was, I have a little anecdote and a piece. It was my birthday, and I Bobby was going to sing Happy Birthday to me, and I grabbed the mic from him, or snatched the mic, which I don't know, whichever is more polite. And then Joey is a bass singer, you could hear that bass, fabulous bass voice. And then David Worm, who does the percussion in Bobby's group, he's the vocal percussion, joined me in this piece that was for Bobby. And so he was shocked. It's called Medicine Man, and it was played today on KPFA by Kevin Vance. So anyway, boom, 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 chicka-dum, ba, boom, 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 ba, boom, boom, ba, chicka-dum, ba, boom, boom, ba, oh, Medicine Man, ba, chicka-dum, ba, ba, oh, doom, doom, ba, djembe chess, ba, da, orchestra, da, do, ba, in his vest, boom, ba, boom, striking local ribs, resonating globally, body painting rhythm, 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 opening hearts, gathering tribes, medicine man, tribe of I can, Cali African, speaking sinew, muscle, mother tongue, ancestral spirit. Can you hear it? Can you hear it? Can you hear it? Bird with supple wings spread wide, flapping against the tide, soaring, spinning circles of song ever wider, 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 wider. Medicine, song shaman, dispensing tinctures in tonic of myrrh, pulling roots from deep in the earth, using harmonious melodic infusions, healing terminal spiritual contusion, practicing playful pirouettes across lines of language, currency and gods, while small-minded men with miniature hearts go bugging the world, eavesdrop but can't hear it, gather freighters full of intelligence to suffer 1,000 years of ignorance. Can't hear it. Medicine man. The sun never, ever, 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 ever sets on a circle singer's empire. Because truth is the weapon of mass instruction. And love wins wars for hearts and minds. And we can. Yes, we can. We can. Yes, we can. Order world new. Order world new. Order world new. New world order. Yeah, so it was incredible I didn't have to do any of the musical elements then. It was Joey and Dave, and Bobby was really stunned, and he really appreciated it. But Joey, I think my biggest takeaway from him is just the whole thing of taking risk, and and now I'm learning the element of being in your own body, just really finding the rhythm in your body. That's what they did very, very well. And they were locked in.
There's a Bay Area teacher that we have a special relationship with. Both of us took training. Lissa Tyler Renault.
Well, I sort of like it that so far in the conversation, it's morphed a little bit towards talking about theater training as opposed to talking about actor training.
就是我比较喜欢，就是我们现在的这个讨论一直都在讲戏剧培训，而不是在讲演员培训。
Because in my mind, there is really no such thing as acting. Yeah.
所以在我的想法里，就是没有所谓的表演这个说法。
Ashanti,
Punjabi,
German,
Spanish,
Yiddish,
Amharic,
Eskimo,
Chinese,
Cherokee,
Arabic,
Zulu,
Tagalog,
Ashanti,
Punjabi,
German,
Spanish,
Yiddish,
Amharic,
Eskimo,
Chinese,
Cherokee,
Arabic,
Zulu.
Eye of our Mother Earth,
Circle of colors, unbroken.
Look who's here.
Lissa.
Hi there. So,
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So what does the teacher wish to talk about today? What is the lesson?
Are we making you proud or horrified?
No, it's very moving, really, to know more about where you had all been before you landed on my doorstep, my figurative doorstep. Yeah, no, it's lovely. I only wish there were time to talk about some of the things that you've said, because I was like, I want to say, I have something to say.
What if I started by saying, when I had found you years before we actually took your class, I had a phone conversation with you where you recommended, had a reading list. One of the readings I recall was, I think it was Lady Sings the Blues, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was Billie Holiday's autobiography. Yeah.
And, I was really blown away by that, and I said, okay, I have to take this course or engage in this training. And, it was just one of those things, partly, again, it goes back to some old dead white guys on green paper. And that was part of the issue. But fast forward, we did have the opportunity to connect. And what I really got from your class, there were a number of things I got, but particularly was the attention to detail when it came to speech and language and final consonants and so forth. And more, I think anytime you work with an instructor, there's something you could take away and it's in your toolkit, and you run into a situation, there's a broken beam here. I have the perfect tool to reattach the beam. What I got from you, and particularly when you talked about Sir John Gielgud's image of controlling these wild horses, so to speak, your feet, you always told us about the right footwear for the stage. And so, whenever I put my shoes on, I feel like I'm ready to work. I'm also very aware of my grounding. And the other thing that, I got from you, of course, we did voice work, and that was very important because I was coming out of the Lesac book. I had gotten that book years ago, and I was reading that. And so, there was a confluence. Some of the things that I was already putting my toe in, you had that pool for us. And I think one of the things that I really appreciated about your instruction was how it was interdisciplinary. Here we are in theater actors training, and we're talking about John Coltrane and Eric Dolphy. And I said, oh my God, this is this is where I belong. This is my tribe, So I just, I don't know. I throw it to you. Toss the ball in your court.
Well, I love it and think it's kind of hilarious that you started by talking about tools, because these days when I'm thinking about where to begin to talk about my work, I start with the painter Kandinsky, because he taught at the famous Bauhaus School of Architecture and has been a huge inspiration for me. His teaching, very methodical, very detailed. And one of the things that he said became the motto for our school, which, as you said, is the Actors Training Project. And here I have my son's t-shirt. But look at the motto.
Oh, it's Canton, yes.
Yeah, it says the quality of his tools will be the measure of a student's sincerity.
Wow. And you would always say to have the voice of that will carry the voice of the teacher with us, and you carried your voices. And I just remember, we've carried your voice. I carry it in New York when I'm there working, and so.
So my focus was on tools. In actor training, there's a huge problem has been beginning from something called a method or a system or something like that. And I was always kind of allergic to that idea. I always, well, in Asia, for example, my work is known as the Renault approach, right? It's a way of thinking or something. So you also said interdisciplinary. So in the spirit of providing my students with tools, quality tools, I created a curriculum which included acting, voice, movement, theater history, dramatic literature, and text analysis. And in order to teach all of those things as an organic whole, I had to embark on many parallel professions myself. So in the voice field, they know me as a voice teacher. In the movement field, they know me as a somatics person. And I grew up in the theater, so I've been acting my whole life, and also directing. And so for me, that experience of teaching was doing all of those things. I always say it's like a merry-go-round. You can get on at any point, but you're going to go all the way around in any case, right? So You might think you're coming for text analysis, but you're going to be lying on the floor.
Right.
Right. But yes, anyway, I think when I see your work, which is such a pleasure, such a joy, and I take full credit for it, and I'm very no, the open vowels, I do, and the final consonants, I do take credit. I hear that breath. I mean, I think I was just lucky to catch you at a moment when you had already walked, you had already taken so many of the steps that I believe in. And I happened to catch you at a moment when you were ready to really put it all together. And you did. You could see the brain working. And the body, the inner eye, the inner ear, it was all churning and releasing. It was, as Kandinsky says, it was analyzing and synthesizing. So seeing the things in their smallest details and putting it all together into a whole. So when I see you perform, I see your acting skills, you're working with a text, you're working out of your body, your voice, what you're doing with your voice is so dimensional. Yes, there's so much going on. But another thing I would say about you as a student, did you invite me to do that?
Only if you address his occipital ridge.
Yes, can we talk? And no, I would say as a student, one of the things that made it really a pleasure was that you kept showing up, right? You showed up, and it was not easy to show up. You had a lot else going on, but if you had to show up late, you showed up late. If you had to show up not having eaten, then you brought some food and very politely nibbled in the corner until you were done. And I'm also talking about Ziggy, of course. The two of you were just a joy. And but also because my own sensibility is not only interdisciplinary, but intercultural, and you were able to go with me through all of that. I remember Wynton Marsalis once said that if you're going to play an instrument, you need to be able to play everything that's ever been written for that instrument, right? Wow. And I know somehow that whole sense of reading the literature or knowing the literature, not only for the stage, but also the poetry, as you mentioned before, and all the different forms that are written and can be spoken and can be incarnated as performance. All those things. And also you were funny, which was really nice for me because sometimes people who come to study acting are very earnest and kind of overly earnest and kind of tense about everything. So in your case, what was lucky for you was also lucky for me. You had something you wanted to do, something you were doing, something you were basically instantaneously applying the work to. And so in that sense, you were really perfect for the work that I did. When I took on a student, I always took on students who had a history of excellence in some field. They might have won things in debating in high school, or they might play the violin, or they might speak 5 languages, or they might be getting straight A's in medical school, whatever, but something so that they even know what excellence means, what it feels like, or what it could feel like, because a lot of people don't feel that. They don't really know what excellence is, what it can feel like. And you did clearly. And so it was easy for me to slip all my rather unconventional
I love it.
work into your life, into what was already going on for you. So,
and that's one of the things I loved about your work in that and I think that's a common thread that runs through all of the teachers tonight is that they have broad canvases and many brushes, or large toolbox and many toolboxes and many tools. And one of the things that was really a game changer for me was the journal that you required, artist journal. And that was new to me, because it, and I spent a lot of time collaging my journals based on Louis Armstrong. That's what he did. He was a collage master. But the journal enabled me to look back at my work and see where I had come from and what challenges I had overcome, and and where I was trying to go, and how successful I was in getting there incrementally.
Yeah.
And the funny thing, this I will say, is that one of the joys of Upsurge is working with Ziggy, because I think Ziggy, truthfully, was you're a better student, because when she gets on the stage, sometimes I'm just amazed at what she can do, and I just know where that came from, and it's beautiful, and she's made it her own. And I think we're two different, very different but complementary individuals when we hit the stage. But sometimes I just get a kick out of watching her and seeing her handle material, because sometimes I could have something, I could write something, and then just toss it to her at the moment's notice, and she can make it. I've had a problem where someone walks up to her and say, "Oh my God, wow, you wrote, oh, that's great," and like she wrote it, but no, I wrote it. She just performed it.
Yeah.
But
well, it's really interesting that you've talked this evening about your writing, and Mary Webb too. That was kind of another entry point into the work that I do. And also, a lot of my own entry into the work is a painting process. And there's Ziggy. And I don't know if everybody knows that Ziggy is a wonderful painter. And if she's been hiding it from you, she has to stop doing that. Really, really wonderful. And so I think each of you had a natural, into my own sensibility. So yeah, we had a shared sensibility.
That would be my yoga teacher. And another one of those individuals with many, many tools in her toolbox is she teaches like 17 different styles of yoga, 27 styles, I'm not sure. But the thing about Carla Kupal is her teaching has an affinity to jazz. But anyway, we have a little.
Let's get a little taste of Carla.
Hi, my name is Carla Kupal. I invite you to join me in some movements to prepare for meditation practice. Please come to sitting comfortably and sit tall, shoulders wide. Close the eyes. Open the eyes. Arms wide, shoulders down. 8 sniffs to circle up. Hold posture, hold the breath, sit tall, palm the belly, pull back, release like this. Please lift heart, lift chin, lean back, arms wide, fingers point back. On exhale, hug, roll forward. Please repeat a few more times. Other arm on top, roll forward. One more. Hug, roll forward. One last pranayama done through sound. This one to set the tone for meditation. Much trouble for our brothers and sisters across the planet. This chant is for happiness, and may it come to everyone. And that includes health and healing. Join me. 4 words. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino
Carla.
Yes.
Wow, Carla. I just remember enjoying your yoga classes because as I thought of them, they were like a jazz jam session where you could improvise. You would come and students would call out what their needs were in the moment at that particular time, that particular day, and you would incorporate that into the day's lesson. And I thought that was really phenomenal. And I remember your famous dictum was yoga 3 times a week. And then also I remember you teaching that you thought of yoga as meditation with motion. And so, you know, those were my takeaways. And it really helped me get, you know, like I like to think of, like, particularly from New York, you think about the penthouses up at the 33rd floor, but then the subcellar is where all the pipes are and the plumbing and all that really make the building go. And so that was what I am deeply indebted to you for over the years.
Meaning you're up in your head quite a bit.
Yeah, I was up in the, you know, upstairs a little bit.
I think yoga is takes care of a lot of the plumbing and electricity and whatnot in the body. Yeah, so
Yeah.
poetry can happen upstairs.
One of the things I wanted to say, you know, about your class, though, that I recall, you know, I had taken various yoga classes, you know, and I also as a 17-year-old started, I got a book. I'm in South Central LA, and I get this yoga book, and I start studying these postures, these poses, and and so maybe I have about a half dozen of them that I was doing regularly, and then I eventually got into a couple classes. But when I got to your class, the thing I loved about it, your class was always fun, and I would always be up front, and we could, there was repartee and remarks and jokes and so forth that went on. And it was just fun and liberating. The other thing I'm going to throw in that I really loved about working with you and your classes is that you came to our gigs, and sometimes I would call people up from the audience, volunteers, to come up on stage and do things that we had in mind. And you would always be willing. And so I so much appreciated that.
Well, it was wonderful having you up front because I knew there were some things that you would like if I said scooch, I would be snickering, right?
Scooch, scooch.
Yeah.
It's one of those onomatopoeias, is it?
Right, you're right, it's true.
It's a very scoochy word,
Right.
and a scoochy action. And yeah, with that was really fun. And the fact that you were so dedicated and focused. And by the way, I've never thought of myself as jazzy, but this is the second time in 1 week that somebody said that to me, and so I'm so honored. But yeah, it was so great having you in class because you were so dedicated. You brought a book toward the beginning for me to see, and yeah, and it was so inspiring. It's kind of like when you're speaking with somebody and they're really attentive and interested, it kind of animates and yeah, so it did that for me as well. It made me more excited about the practice. And in terms of movements, I like the ones kind of like the road less taken, or the words less used. The movements that aren't the straight front to back, left and right,
Yeah.
up and down, all the in-betweens, they get left out, right? So I'm really into a lot of circular stuff, which is also more female, a feminine style of yoga. The masculine style is more linear, and we need both, but yeah, so that's where some of the unusual moves come in. And in terms of formality, yeah, I've never liked that very much. I prefer to have a little bit of back and forth with the clap, not too much.
Not too much. Yeah. I wanted to, acknowledge you and appreciate you for is that your yoga class was not divorced from the world, and in that, even in the little video clip, you were recognizing that in the world, there's a lot of suffering and a lot of injustice that's exists. And, it's important to acknowledge it, not just, we get into the ostrich pose, that wasn't your practice. And so I so much appreciated that.
Yeah, we don't want to do the head in the sand kind of pose. No, we want to open the heart, as big as this room and as big as this city and as big as this state and as big as this country and as big as this continent and as big as this planet and as big as this cosmos.
My next teacher, Lisa Raphael, of Manhattan. Oh my God. Very, very, very challenging teacher. I remember when I first met her, I think my first question to her was, I guess I had seen something on television and it was about lateral movement. And then I asked her when I first walked up to her, I said, "Do you do lateral movement?" It was so funny. But let me just say something, what Elisa comes in, and one of my classmates in her class, a fellow by the name of Rich, we would tease and we would say, "Oh my God, she could teach in a phone booth, or she could teach in a bathroom, because in New York, there's always changes at that gym. One week or one day, the large room is available. The next day, it's not, you're in a smaller room. And she always has something appropriate and challenging. And it was so funny because I had a gig at this venue, and it was 40 minutes, me on the stage by myself. Usually, if we do an hour gig, it's with the group, the ensemble. And so, I didn't realize at the time that, I'm not doing a lot of minutes, really. It's people are taking solos, and Ziggy's doing a piece, and then there's some more solos, and then there's chatter, banter with the audience. But I had this 40 minutes, and it was just me. And I had to, and I went nonstop. There was no welcome, thank you. It was just, one 40-minute set. And the remark I got from a friend of Ziggy's was that tour de force, and I credit Lisa with that to a large extent, because, in my mind, I said that if I could do her 1 hour class, I can do this damn 40 minutes. I can do it standing on my head. And I aced it, I have to say. And then the other thing is that I started to zero in on my high school weight, and I was getting there before COVID-19 interrupted. And also I had these beautiful pants that I had gotten for my birthday, and I wore them for gigs. I think that's gone now, but Lisa got me there. And so she was taking me somewhere that I hadn't been for years. So I give a lot of credit to Lisa Raphael and her teaching.
Can I just ask, where can you place your class with her, and what time of day it was? Because that I remember distinctly.
I believe
being up in Harlem. And
I was living, 147th in St. Nick in Harlem, and would go to the 63rd Street Y, and her class was at 7, but I would get there usually when I would be there at 5 o'clock.
This is in the morning, that 5 o'clock, and that 7 o'clock, yes.
So, the struggle again is getting out of the penthouse, bringing the elevator down to the subcellar and putting in the work there. And Lisa has 2 of my least favorite exercises, but those are the ones that have been sustaining me during COVID, I have to say. So, but anyway, I could go on and on.
And what was the class called? Lisa, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your classes are like?
My teaching has always been very straightforward and not, I'm very success oriented, and I'm not as interested in how you get there as long as you do it well. And I think that's what sets me apart from other instructors. I'm really a teacher and a coach and not a performer. I'm not in the arts at all. I don't sing, I don't dance. I'm petrified to have to be up in front of people to speak unless I'm doing my work. And then I'm very comfortable. But my classes are really about just give it a try. And failure is definitely an option, because there are going to be things that I ask you to do that you won't be able to do. It doesn't matter to me if you can do them or not. I really just want people to try, and that's the success. So that's sort of the basis of my class. I have to say that when Raymond came into class, he immediately just changed the air, because first of all, I'm up really early, but for a lot of people, 7 is like, really, they've been out of bed for all of 12 minutes. And Raymond just sort of came bouncing in and had a good morning for everybody. And it was, when he was in class, it was really much lighter and much less intense and much more fun, because as I like to say, you're not here to have fun with me. You're here to do work. And people thought that was very funny. And so when Raymond came in, you could see sort of face of relief on everybody because they knew that it was going to be a little less work and a little more fun.
Could we just say there's people asking in the chat, what kind of class is this? I mean, I think we know who you are, but we're not being clear to the audience.
It's a cross training class, like a boot camp class. So
at the West Side YMCA, it's a physical training class.
Called the Functional Fitness Room, which in itself was a funny name because some of the equipment was very, shall we say, dungeon looking. And we just had a really wild and crazy group for doing some really hard work. We had a really good group who came in to do hard work, but with a big dose of fun attached to it.
Each of the teachers tonight there's a common thread, it seems in my mind, that runs through to each of them. You know, all of you are able to turn on a dime. That's particularly important in New York. You know, you have to be able to, okay, the room's not available. Okay, repairs are being done in here, so you have to move into, or maybe you have to move upstairs into this tiny room. And so she would always come prepared and able to change. And one of the things I had given up on running. I thought I would never run again in my life, you know. And then I got into your class, and you know, you said, okay, well, those of you who can't run or who don't want to run or whatever the case was, walk fast. And so I started walking. Then after that, you know, gradually I started to run. I saw other people running and I wanted to kind of compete, quote unquote. And so it's just really, I think one of the big takeaways for me around your class is the question of mindset. You know, if one buys into the notion that you reach a certain stage in life or you reach a certain age, and then from there, it's downhill. You can't do this, that, or the other. And I think your class puts light to that. You know, it certainly did for me. And if I could incorporate that based on your class, I could also apply it to other areas in life too. And so I thought that was really a great takeaway.
Well, people change, bodies change, and there's very few people that can do the same thing at 50 that they can do at 20 or at 80 that they could do at 50. My past experience, I owned what we used to call the mature fitness enthusiast. I had my own studio, and the youngsters were 70, 71, 72, and Rose was 94. And this was mobile. This was not a sit and be fit class. These people had to walk in under their own power. And they were still moving and grooving. And even though it didn't look the same as it did 10 years ago or 50 years ago, I'm a big believer that bodies were meant to move. And unless something tragic happens where you can't do that anymore, it doesn't really matter. Movement is movement. Some people dance, some people run, some people power walk. It doesn't really matter, but I think that bodies were meant to move. And I think there's power in movement. I think that whether you are struggling to do a mile run or 20 push-ups in a row, there's power that is solely yours because nobody can do it for you. You know, you might be able to recite something and did a really good job, but somebody else wrote it, or perform a piece that somebody else directed. But when you do something with your body, you're the only one that can do it. Nobody can do it for you. And I think that there's a lot of power in that, and that can carry over to other things that you do in life. So I think it's important to move. And again, how you do it doesn't matter. If one way doesn't work, try another way.
I know in your class you would have us fill out, I think it was at the beginning of the year, our goals. And usually my goals were stamina and strength and coordination. You know, those were usually my goals. And then you would mail we would fill out a piece of paper with our goals on it. We would list our goals and then put them in an envelope, self-addressed envelope. And then at a certain point in the year, you would mail the envelope back to us, which I thought was a brilliant stroke.
New Year's resolutions. I think that New Year's resolutions are great. I prefer to call them New Year's fitness goals or fitness goals for whatever the current year was. And I've done it probably for the last 20 years. And that's exactly what I do. I bring in very small slips of paper and I ask you to write down what your challenges are, what you hope to accomplish. And hopefully some of them will be things like 20 push-ups in a row or to run a marathon. And then you put them in the envelope and you address it to yourself. I don't want to read it. They're not my goals. I don't care what it says. But you've written them and you're coming to my class. So hopefully there is a sort of secret give and take where you're getting what you need to accomplish those goals from my class. And around April, I do mail them back. And people are surprised for a lot of different reasons. One, because they're getting a piece of mail with their own writing on it.
You're right.
Oh, that's kind of freaky.
Right.
But then it's, for some people, it's a bummer because they open it up and they're like, oh, I guess I was supposed to do that. For some people, they've surpassed that goal. So, yeah, that's something that I've done as a tradition now. This year will be very interesting to see what people write because this was a year like no other. So we'll see what the goals are when people open their envelopes in April. And having faces to see every day and just feeling like my life didn't stop. It's been able to carry on, maybe in a different way. It looks different, but I feel very, very grateful for that. So, yeah.
Wow, beautiful. It's great to hear, because we talk about our teachers to each other a lot, but it's great to also hear what the teachers actually think about teaching, about what that gift is for you, that it's a gift for you to be able to do that. That was beautiful.
I'm laughing because it's just so devilish of me in some way, that, those two exercises I hate, were, and they're real. And I remember before, in February, you told the class actually that if you only have one exercise, the burpee is it. I hate the burpee, but it's been really good to me. And I hate mountain climber. Demonstrate a mountain climber, please.
Mountain climbers are, they're basically a plank, which is you here, and then you just run your legs. And it's a great core work. It's a great stamina builder.
Oh.
And Raymond's really good at them. Just do them more often.
And on that note, there's a theme here. We love all your our teachers, his teachers. Thank you for this evening. Thank you to Sarah.
Thank you.
I just love, can I say something? I just love the dedication to the teachers. And it was really not what I expected. And it was so deeply moving to honor those whose shoulders you're standing on, Raymond. And kind of help understand your growth and development and this idea of lifelong learning and how learning happens and when it happens and who is a teacher and who isn't and who's a student more than anything, and you talked about how, you didn't get such a great education of a sorts in the public schools in LA, but you certainly made up for it, and also what I was also moved by is this. I remember this. I think you put it in there in OPC. It's like leave your ego at the door.
Oh yeah, check your ego at the door. Yeah.
I mean, and that was just so real. And I started thinking about that as you started talking about I mean, you'd already like been out in the world doing things and you know, working as a professional, you know, word master, you know, jazz poetry with Upsurge and doing your thing, and but still always open to learning and continuing to learn. You know, that I was just so moved by that, and the level of I think humility it takes to actually honor that in oneself, like, oh, there's more to learn. I can learn something from this person, and it was just so beautiful, so lovely. I was very touched by the whole thing. Thank you for sharing that part. And I've always, and I also, one of the things that I really just adore about you, honestly, Raymond, is, you know, you feel very deeply, and your words are like that. But it's like when something touches you, you know, the tears will come, and you will just let them come. And I just, it's such a, another culture would say, what a manly thing to do. I did learn that from about I think some of the South Pacific men there, or maybe it's Italy, like a man that a true man cries, that kind of thing, whatever a true man is. But you know, I don't want to get caught up in that. Right. But I just appreciate, you know, your you know, just your willingness to, I don't even know if it's willingness. Your stuff just comes out, and
right.
I just wanted to say that. That's all.
Thank you.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if my words are going to be as profound as Angela's, because I really appreciated what Angela had to say. But as a teacher, this was really, really touching and really beautiful to me. And I thank you so much for sharing the people that have influenced you in such a great way. It means a lot that your teachers know how important they are to you. And one of the things that I've really appreciated about you, and it came through so distinctly tonight, is that you live in your truth. And there's something really beautiful about that, living in your truth, and that's that you have this natural curiosity. And from the very first time, I remember the very first time that I met you, before Ziggy met you.
She's responsible. That Mia is responsible.
You know, the thing that was really interesting about you was that curiosity about everyone in the room, and that is one of your great endearing qualities, both as an artist and as a person. You know, you're the person that on the street, if we're walking down the street, there's got to be 25 people that we meet that you know, that's an incredible gift, that you're really pulled and drawn into people in a way that, besides being a great student, you're a really great teacher. That's it. I love you guys.
Interesting. I never thought of it that way.
Sweet.
I love you guys. Thank you so much for a really beautiful evening.
Sure.
Sweet.
Yeah, thank you all for
love
coming.
You. Yes.
Really appreciate y'all being there. This process has been kind of amazing, because we started out trying to do something, and then, you know, how things transformed themselves during the course of the journey. And that's what it's been. But it's been really beautiful, because it's enabled me to explore where I've been, and also have a glance or a glimpse at where I might go. Who knows? And all the people that are responsible for the journey. And that, I think that's the beautiful thing, that all these forces have come together and help me try and realize a vision that I have. So it's been, you know, that's been just a gift beyond, yeah.